So what I wanted to share with you today was my top 5 biggest mistakes that I see online course creators making, and of course, how you can avoid them. Now, the interesting thing about these 5 things is that some of them might be a little bit familiar to you. However, I'm going to guess that most of them are not. And the first one on that list comes down to the topic of quizzes. And aside from very rare exceptions, your online course should never have a quiz. Now, the exceptions to that rule comes in things where, like, if you are teaching an online course about getting your driver's license or becoming a pilot or getting a drone's license, something like that, where it is required for that person to achieve what you're trying to get them to achieve through the course, if they have to take a test. At that point, doing a test quiz or a test makes total sense. For everything else, it does not. The big problem with tests and quizzes is that they're based on this very archaic version of academia that if a person is able to hear and then regurgitate and then write down on a test or quiz facts or information that they memorize, then they must have learned it, right? If you're able to guess correctly A, B, C, or D, then you've got that subject matter down. When we've seen that this is rarely, if ever, the case, and studies have demonstrated this over the last several decades. A practical example of this I love to use is Figma. So Figma is software that's used for a lot of UI, UX designers, web designers, SaaS designers, that sort of thing, in order to achieve, specific layouts for their apps and websites and tools. But just imagine for a second you were taking a class on Figma and they asked you to go through the process of memorizing all the different tools, all the different layouts, all the different things that you needed to do in order to create something in Figma. And at the end of that class, there was a quiz and you got 100% on it because you memorized where everything is in Figma. Does that mean that you've learned Figma? Of course not. You haven't learned Figma until you start using Figma to create something with it. The other big problem with tests and quizzes is that they just kind of fill time, right? Because they just waste time. Because in the amount of time you spend actually practicing doing something, right? Like in my other example, if you just practice making something in Figma, you're naturally going to memorize where all the tools are anyways because you'll be using the software. So again, a test is just kind of something that just wastes the student's time and takes away from them actually putting it into practice and thereby actually learn. Now, I understand why this happens, right? This isn't by any means the fault of the teachers specifically. If you look at almost any online course platform, one of the things that they will boast and they will list as like one of their primary features is being able to build out quizzes, and even now having AI generate quizzes for you. So it's just busy work and clutter that gets packed into online courses. Some of it is both because online course platforms just want to have more features to sell you so they can charge you more for their platform, but also it has to do with the fact that online course platforms have kind of pushed the notion that in order as a creator for you to charge more for your course, you need to pack more stuff into it, when that's not at all what the pricing should be based on. Which leads us directly into number 2, most common mistake that I see a lot of online course creators make, and that is charging too little. And what I touched on previously is the number one reason why so many people charge too little is because they start focusing so much on all the stuff that's getting packed into it. In order for somebody to be able to charge more, they think, I gotta add a bunch of quizzes, I gotta add a bunch of PDFs, I gotta add a bunch of worksheets, and just cram it full of busy work so that the person feels like they're engaged and they got their money's worth. The reality is this isn't what people should be basing their course pricing on at all. The number one thing a student wants and why we take online courses to begin with is because we want to achieve a specific transformation. If you're running maybe a freelance gig, you want to get more clients. If you are somebody who aspires to be a musician, maybe you want to learn and become an expert at the violin. Whatever it is, we want to find a way, a path to getting from where we are to where we want to be. Your course is what takes the person from point A to point B. And so it doesn't matter if you have 5 videos that get me from point A to point B or 500, right? The point is that I get there as quickly as possible. And that's the key. It has nothing to do with how many videos or how many content or how many quizzes, hopefully 0, but none of those things have anything to do with the price. What you should really be doing is take a step back, ignore how many videos there are, Make sure there's enough to teach what needs to be taught. Ignore how many PDFs there are. There should only be those that are actually useful. And start doing research on what is the intrinsic value of what it is that you're creating. How much value is it? For example, if you're teaching freelancers how to get more clients, how much are their clients worth? Because if they're worth a lot, if they're gonna start upping thousands of dollars of income every single year because they're getting more clients based upon your class, then you should be charging a lot more money for that than the average kind of $49.99 you see, or the $97 course. You should be charging $500, $700, $1,200 for that. I've talked about in the past, one of my all-time favorite online courses that I've ever taken was over $2,000, and it was worth every penny. And by the way, there was no quizzes. Now, I'm not saying we should inflate prices or that we should raise them for no reason, but what I am saying is that there should be some very serious consideration going into where the value is in your class. And it has nothing to do with downloads or videos or stuff. It has everything to do with the transformation that you're providing to the person who is taking it. Now, another online course mistake that I see people making is when it comes to their very starting point, and that is choosing a niche. For a lot of people out there who are wanting to create an online course, they always go too broad, right? And so what you'll see is you'll see an online course out there like how to play chess, right? Which the problem is that there is a masterclass that exists by Garry Kasparov, who is one of the best chess players to have ever lived, right? And so for someone like me who's wanting to learn chess, I'm probably gonna go to Gary before I go to somebody else, right? Or if Magnus Carlsen ever comes out with a chess class, everybody's gonna go there. Does that mean that you cannot create a class on chess? Absolutely not. You can, you just have to niche down. Find out what is it about you specifically and how you play chess that somebody else might find valuable. Maybe you're even a beginner and you want to teach people how you got from 0 to, a rating of 1,000. Another example is, let's say you're a photographer, right? You don't want to make an online course about photography unless you are a really well-known photographer. Instead, maybe there's a specialty that you enjoy and you're really good at. Let's say that you do a lot of weddings, you shoot a lot of weddings, and you're really good at working with the bride's parents, particularly, her mom, in order to wrangle all the guests in order to get those perfect photos. Well, maybe there's a lot of photographers out there who are just too shy to communicate properly with the bride's mom in order to do that. Well, you could create an online course that teaches them how to do that, the steps they need to take. That's very niched down. That's not only photography, that's wedding photography. That's not only wedding photography, that's working behind the scenes with your client's mom in order to be able to achieve perfect photos. It is in these types of niches where you're going to find a demand, and a demand that people typically, depending on what realm it exists in, people would be more likely to pay for. Another issue I see out there a lot is waiting until the very end, that is after your course is done and finalized, in order to begin the marketing process. In reality, if you haven't done at least some basic validation beforehand, which goes along with what I talked about previously in terms of finding a good niche, is that you don't really know, and none of us really fully know, but you never really know if there's actually a group of people out there who want to purchase your course. And so one of the ways that you can start to do that is before you even shoot your first video for your class, is to go through the process of determining whether or not this is something A, people are interested in, and B, they're willing to pay for. Now, the best way to do this always, if you already have an audience, is to pre-sale. Right? Is to tell people up front, here's what I'm gonna teach, here's what I'm gonna help you do, here's a really basic landing page, here are all the lessons, I'm only gonna shoot the course if there's enough interest, here's a 50% off discount, pre-order here, right? That is the best way to do it, because if you don't get enough people signing up, then you just refund everybody their money. If you do, then you make the course. But not everybody has an audience and the luxury to be able to do that. And so if pre-selling isn't an option for you, another option, not quite as reliable, but still gives you some indicators, is to start creating some small pieces of content. Create short versions, still valuable, maybe post them on TikTok or YouTube Shorts, and just start to gauge what the reaction to it is. Are you able to get a decent number of views, likes, comments? Are you getting engagement that helps demonstrate to you that this is a topic that people are actually genuinely caring about? And it doesn't have to be massive. It just has to be enough to push you over the edge to know that, okay, this is at least something somebody would be interested in. The flip side of that, and why this is also valuable, is you can also start to build a small audience that you can actually pitch the class to later. One of the great things about the way that social media is changing today is it's no longer based upon how many followers you have, it's based more upon the interests that people have and whether or not it's relevant to your content, whether you have one follower or whether you have 1 million. But what that enables you to do is to be marketing long before you actually launch the course. The goal is hopefully you've got enough people interested in what it is that you're teaching long before you even shoot your first video, so that once all the videos are shot and the course is ready to launch, you've got people who are ready and they're willing to buy. And number 5 today, in terms of biggest mistakes I see people making when it comes to their online course, is something I've touched on a little bit, but that is focusing upon the stuff. Now, I've already touched on this a decent amount in other sections and other problems that I see with online courses, but one of the things I didn't touch on, and maybe even the biggest of them all, is the fact that when you focus on the stuff, when you focus upon the PDF downloads, when you focus upon the number of videos or the amount of minutes that people get to watch in video content, you start to create this distance between that thing I was talking about earlier, between point A and point B, of people getting where they need to get to. When I say focusing upon the stuff, what it tends to do is it points to a bigger problem with a lot of online course platforms, because again, they want to sell you as many features as possible so they can get as much money from you every single month for that monthly or yearly subscription. But the bigger point when it comes to selling the stuff is that it puts into focus this idea that the longer it takes to complete your course, right? Remember all the PDFs and downloads and quizzes and all the stuff that gets crammed in there, and the length of time that the student is spending there, thousands of minutes of video and hundreds of PDFs, is that it's making it sound like, from the teacher's perspective and from the student's perspective, that there's more value the longer the course gets, which that's not true at all. That's not true for anything, right? Just imagine if you were gonna go out and you're gonna hire an Uber driver, and the Uber driver said that, I can take you from point A to point B in 7 minutes. But if you want for free, as today, like an extra deal, I can make it 14, right? Nobody would take that deal. Nobody wants to take 14 minutes to get somewhere as opposed to 7. But for whatever reason, we have this idea in online courses that the longer the course is, the bigger it is, the more stuff that's in it, the more valuable it is. The reality of this is it's the exact opposite. And that's why I think that this is one of the top mistakes, is that if you can get somebody from that point A to point B significantly faster than everybody else, that in and of itself makes your class more valuable. Just think about it from a student's perspective. Imagine if there was a course, both of them were $200, and they taught you how to master the guitar. One taught you in 25 videos, and one taught you in 7, and they were all of equal length. Which one would you take if they achieved the same result? I would guess nearly everybody would take the course with 7. But for whatever reason, we think that the course that has the 20 videos or the more videos is better or more valuable. It isn't. The number of videos has nothing to do with how valuable a course is. In fact, the shorter the course is, as long as the transformation is there, the more valuable it is. Okay, so that's it. These are just some things that I see all the time as I am not only creating my own online courses, but helping others to create theirs. And I also see a lot of these going on and being discussed in various communities that are very in-depth into the online course creation process. But hopefully you found this useful. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you didn't already, and also feel free to leave me a comment if you have seen a mistake out there that I have not mentioned here. And with all that being said, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.